do you silence this instrument when you have a lot of distortion on it? Because when you're playing with a clean sound, it's not that big of a problem, right? Because the strings don't want to ring out. When you add distortion and enough of it, it's like the instrument teams up with the amp and tries to make all the strings that you're not playing ring out when you don't want them to. And most players really develop this skill, kind of, a little bit at a time, because we don't want the strings to ring out. We try to silence them using all kinds of little tricks. But I developed a very simple method of doing so, and a very simple, you could say, method of practicing it. And first of all, you need to palm mute, and you need to become very good at palm muting very accurately. So you can go from like no palm muting to a little bit to a lot, and then nothing. And you need to experiment with that all the time. So for instance, if I kick in the distortion here, on each string, you need to be able to effortlessly go back and forth, and you practice that simple. And it feels differently on each string because it's a different position from the hand. I warmly recommend that you take your PC bone, which you will find at the end of your hand here, just where the wrist begins, and you can put that where the low E string meets the bridge, because that gives your brain a reference point of where you have your hand, so it's always the same position from that reference point of the PC bone on where the low E string meets the bridge. So if you start palm muting there, those little movements of going back and forth like this, or lifting your hand like this, to decrease the amount of palm mute, that becomes the same movement every time. So you can do it gradually without looking, because it's a feeling in the hand. If you anchor your index or your pinky on the scratch plate, then you'll have, it's a different thing, because the brain will have to, it takes you longer to learn simply. And also when it comes to picking, alternate picking, sweep picking, all kinds of other stuff, then this position has worked so well for me and so many others. But so the first exercise is really to go, to simply take each string and then be able to palm mute a lot and palm mute nothing, just by moving it. Right? And it becomes like a movement like this when you get down to the higher string. And then take your hand away once in a while, because that forces you to readjust it and find your way back. Once you have that place where you can palm mute and just move your hand just a little bit in order to not palm mute, you need to, get away from it so you can learn to find that spot again, that sweet spot. Right? So you can go back and forth like, right? So basically, when I'm playing down from the low string to the high string, I'm palm muting all the way. So let's say I'm playing the G string, right? Every lower string is totally palm muted. So if we have all the lower strings, and now I'm fretting a note in the 5th fret on the G string, and that's not palm muted at all. But the lowest, and that's finding that sweet spot where you're muting the lower strings but not the G string, and that's the second exercise. And there's no reason, no point in doing it on the low E string, but you can start with the A string, mute the E string with a good palm mute, and then find a way to have the A string ring out almost uninhibited. See, this is palm muted. This is almost not. Right? And then you go on to the D string. Totally open to the D string. And you might search and probe, keep your PC bone where the low E string is the bridge, and then find your way around it, right? And then you do this exercise every single day, just for a couple of minutes. Also, moving on to the G string with a muted D string. Right? You also need that for, right? And the same thing with the G string, B string. So now I have right, and the E string. Right? So very important. So now I actually have the technique of being able to mute every lower string underneath or below the one I'm playing. Or if you talk ceiling to floor, it will be below or above, right? Whatever. But I can do all the strings in this direction, right? Muted. The strings in the other direction. If I'm playing the G string, for instance, then the way I silence the B and the E is by using my first finger at all times. So when I play a note down here, the B is muted by my first finger. This is G string, B string, E string, right? Muted. And you can, the exercise you can use there, making a lot of noise here, is fretting first the E string, and then having all the other strings, because it's kind of placed on top of them. So now I'm only having fretted the E string, and then the A string. So the first finger is muting and playing, or fretting. Right? And then I combine that with my palm mute, and suddenly I can have only the string I'm playing ring out. And the way to practice and learn this is to do this you know, over and over again, just for a couple of minutes each day, and try to see if you can isolate by using these two techniques, first practicing the one, then the other, then isolate each and every string like this, you know, just using a couple of minutes to do that. And then gradually, as you're playing, because it sounds so bad when all the strings ring out when you play, your brain is naturally going to try and go to the place where everything is muted and use the techniques that you've been practicing each day. But only a couple of minutes is really necessary each day. Where you, okay, muted with my palm, ringing out almost clearly, and then, right? And then you can go, suddenly, okay, what if I'm playing with the third finger, Klaus? Well, then I have the lower fingers placed like that, right? And I still use palm muting. And in the beginning, I actually used to just palm mute a little bit. That's a trick you can use, but that will influence your sound, right? You palm mute everything. And that will absolutely, you know, mute everything, or at least from ringing out when you have distortion on it. So it tames the beast a little bit, because you don't have all kinds of stuff happening. So that's a good idea. Just start palm muting just a little bit. This is the open strings, and this is just a little bit of palm muting. And it keeps them from being all crazy, right? But then you practice that a little bit each day, and then you'll absolutely have the ability. So I only recommend this, and just, you know, get started today, just a little bit each day. And I promise you, in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, you won't notice that you're actually muting once you kick in that distortion.